You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. We're very fortunate in this show to interview some of the world's best athletes, sports people, coaches, trainers, sports psychologists, you name it, people of all levels, the world's best, all levels. Our aim is to increase participation and awareness of sport, and we've also got a segment where we speak to some of the world's most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields who are very kind enough to join the show and share their views. Today we have a guest who has been on the show from the very beginning. She's been very kind enough to join us from the beginning and certainly always brings us a interesting perspective on football and things related to football. She's had an incredible experience the last few weeks. She's managed to go to Wembley, the excitement of the Euros. She was involved in a program which she'll tell us more about as well, which is really, really fascinating. And she's a huge Bolton fan as well and has her finger on the pulse in terms of all things going on in football in the area as well. So StuntPegg, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Looks like we've got a lot to talk about today.
Absolutely, a lot to talk about. Now let's start with Raise Your Game. I know it came out on the 8th of June, I believe, but tell us a bit more about who was involved in that.
So that was a focus for Gareth Southgate on perhaps the grassroots level and the level before you get to what we see at the Euros with the England team. He wanted to look at the supporters and people in football that sort of represented the diversity in this country. We had Cameron Candola, who's at Wolves Academy and is hoping to be the first British Asian in the England senior team. We had Tyra, who's a young black woman who works all across in urban London within football, trying to engage young girls and boys in football, and myself as well, representing a woman in football who wants to see more opportunities for young women because of the effect that it has on mental health and on the upbringings of young women.
I watched the programme and I found it really fascinating, and no doubt some of our listeners will have watched it too. How can they tune in if they haven't seen the program, would like to see more of it? It's really fascinating. I think it really goes into areas that...
Yeah, it does. It's you can get it on YouTube. It's very easily accessible. There's not just one big video. You've got a big video which features everyone and Southgate's the main focal point, and then moving on from that on people's individual channels. There's so many links once you get to the first video, and their stories as well. There's just a lot of interesting content around it.
And how would you describe your experience of working? You've got the England manager. What an incredible experience that would have been.
It is, and you almost think someone that important within the infrastructure of football in this country to take so much interest and want to work so hard on what you believe in as well is such a wonderful feeling. It gives you so much optimism. You know, before that time, if someone asked me about what is being done for young girls in football, I wouldn't be able to give you a positive answer. But to speak to Gareth Southgate, who is the manager of our England men's team, and he wants to make an impact for everyone, for people like me, and so many watching, it was huge.
It's fantastic, and then to have the opportunity to go to some of the games. You went to Wembley, you watched England play Germany, one of the biggest games in world football. You watched England play against a really, really strong Denmark team who, I suppose, in terms of the tournament, they showed tremendous spirit and character to get to where they were after what had happened in the group stage, and obviously the final against Italy. Describe, what would your report card be of England, having seen them up close at Wembley over the course of the tournament?
I come away from it feeling so positive about England. I think we showed a lot of promise, and going forward, you know, this is a team that you can really see winning a major tournament from that. And a lot of heroes that burst onto the scene that perhaps we never would have expected. Calvin Phillips, Bukayo Saka, and the players that didn't get to play as well. But I think from it, I saw that we've got more. We can be braver. We have got some of the best attackers in world football, and we can use that more. But I wonder whether or not it wasn't the time for those players, and next year they'll be more ready for it. But you've just got a lot of positivity from what we saw at the Euros.
Absolutely. And what was the atmosphere like? It's sort of at the point of this recording, the tournament's been played over a week ago, and by the time this airs, within a week or so, it'll be gone in the memory of a lot of people, in the sense that we start to focus on club football, which we'll talk about shortly. But how would you describe the atmosphere at Wembley? It's been a very difficult time for many countries, England being one of them, with the pandemic and obviously the restrictions that have been in place, and the football, in one sense, it gave people a sense of optimism, of some joy. But describe the feeling at the stadium.
Yeah, at the Germany game, my first game at Wembley, that was my first football game in 16 months for many people around that time period. And in that 16 months, it wasn't just not getting to watch football, it was spending a lot of that time in your own four walls and so restricted. And all of a sudden, you've gone from that to amongst thousands of English men and women, children, all there watching you play against Germany, a team that you have struggled so much to beat at this stage. And I cannot explain how palpable the emotions were at that full-time whistle. In the last 5 minutes of the game, I'm sort of longing for that final whistle to blow. Every tackle, every pass was met with so many cheers, just trying to bring them along, pick them up, keep them going. And it was incredible. You could feel that sense of relief.
Absolutely. And would you say, in one sense, it's been a successful tournament? I mean, obviously winning was what the players would have wanted to do, no doubt, and the manager. But would you say, on the face of it, looking back now, the dust has settled and you've had time to process it, would you say making the final, getting there, is some
I think so. I think the fact that Southgate's entire tenure at England has been about progress and learning. And you take back to the World Cup when they won the penalty shootout against Colombia, and that in itself was a big obstacle for England. Going forward from there, the mistakes we made in that World Cup against Croatia in the semi-final, the mentality, the heads dropping. You look at Denmark in the semi-final going 1-0 down, and it didn't seem to faze them whatsoever. They were back on the front foot. So I think in many ways it's just shown how much progress that we are making at a fast speed as a nation, and it makes you so excited for what this team can bring next. Not once growing up watching England were you excited, you were nervous for who are they going to lose to this time, will they get out of the group, whereas now our expectations of this England team are as high as they have ever been in history. So it has to be looked as a positive. That's
a great shout, though. I think it's a really, really good shout, because obviously, your age group, you'll have seen, England struggled to qualify. They didn't qualify in the McLaren for the Euro, and the golden generation maybe didn't live up to the expectation that people had for them, and the optimism maybe wasn't where. But now you think there's an optimism amongst the fans, and that they can go on and win a tournament?
100%. I think it would be... I think these things have changed in this England team, and Southgate needs a lot of credit for that. You look at how it was in the past, you look at club rivalry within England, and the stories we've got from under Capello between Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes, the United camp on one side, the Chelsea camp on another side, whereas they're all best friends. You look at Declan Rice and Mason Mount and their friendship, and this is a very, very different team and set of players, and they've also got an incredible amount of ability and talent, and you look at them and think there's no reason why they can't be favourites to go and win it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you made there, because our listeners will be thinking, okay, semi-final of the World Cup, final of the European, can they win the World Cup? There's a lot of good teams. It won't be easy. Obviously, the teams have got to get there first, respectfully to the opposition. But all things being well, and they're sort of sitting well in the group and they're playing well. Can they win the World Cup realistically? Can England, with the team they've got, go and win that tournament under Southgate?
I don't think it's a big statement to say that if we don't win the World Cup, Southgate's job will be in doubt. Because you almost become a victim of your own success. You have raised the game. And people will look at this team. We've got many players in multiple positions that are top 5 players in the world, top 3 players in the world in their respective positions. And the progress that we've already shown, it would only be the right direction to then go and win the World Cup and learn from previous mistakes. And if we don't do that, you've almost got to question, is it somebody else that will build upon the foundations that Southgate was able to lay down and then take us to win?
That's a really good observation. I have a question, and you may be able to answer it, you may not. It may not fall into your remit, or you might not feel sort of, but my question is this, and I admire Southgate from what I see, having seen him from far afield. I don't know him. I only can comment on what I've seen of him on TV. Obviously, you have the opportunity and raise your game to sort of get a feel for the character he is, but he strikes me as a really strong leader and a very intelligent man, and players respect him. The one thing that I would say is there's been talk about him playing a young team. Now, I sort of sat back and thought, a young team? Has he really played a young team? I mean, there are players within that team, they aren't as young as I think people. I mean, look at the bench, they're very young, the young players who impose themselves. You've mentioned them, fantastic, but overall, maybe some of the younger players, will they get the chance in the next World Cup? And what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel that maybe is, in one sense, almost like am I being too strong saying it's a bit of a false dichotomy, really? Because a lot of the players who did play aren't that young at all, and they've been around for a while.
I think the situation with England right now is that the better players are players that have had, no matter their age, a lot of... You look at Marcus Rashford, he's sort of an example of that as a player. He's 23 years old. You look at him, and on paper you'd say he's a young player, and statistically go towards a young average in the team for their age. Yeah. However, you look closely at the player, the hundreds of appearances he's had for Manchester United. Jose Mourinho made the point about it not that long ago, about how this is a player with a lot of experience at that age, and some of the things he's achieved. I remember his last minute penalty that he smashed away against PSG. This is a player that has done a lot in the game, and I think with Southgate he went for players that balanced the team. I don't think he looked at ages at all. I think with our back line, with our back four, it was the best performing back four within the season of English players. With Phillips and Rice, it was purely about that balance. And I mean, as you say as well, these players aren't like prospects, the players we were playing.
Absolutely.
They're established players. Precisely,
and that's the thing for me, is that a common theme that I saw certainly in the commentary was the young team and many pundits, and ones that I have a lot of respect for, but there was this sort of, it sort of became the young team, and I thought, well, Kane, Maguire, Stones, Walker.
I think the problem is that because they were the second youngest team at the Euros, and that is a fact. However, at the same time, with Maguire it's a difficult one, because at the World Cup, compared that to now, you look at where he was at Leicester, he went to Manchester United. He is a player that maybe you wouldn't expect him to be as old as he is, because of how long he's been at this level, and obviously since his transfer at United you've seen how he's transformed as a player. Harry Kane, of course, is a leader, and Jordan Henderson as well we had in the camp. I think we had enough experience within the camp. I think the situation is that we had a lot of players that were all they are young, but they're not young. They're not 19, 20 years old. But we had a lot of players that were in their early 20s.
But in the squad there were players, to be fair, that were obviously young. But
Bellingham, Saka,
absolutely, and tremendous players, absolutely. And I suppose that kind of bodes well, I think, in that respect. And I think you made a good point there. For me, looking in the future, you got the players in the squad on the bench, the Sanchos of this world, the Sakas of this world, the Bellinghams of this world. the maturity they showed as players was just phenomenal.
I think that's just, you look at club level where they're playing and what they're used to. Sancho and Bellingham both won the German Cup in Germany. These aren't players, like I say with Rashford, these are not players that are young in mentality. They have played a lot.
The mature players.
And they've been through a lot as players.
No, I mean, that's, I think you've made some really, really good insights there. And I just felt for me, Trippier, Walker, Kane, I sort of sat down and did the math and I thought, okay, well, the average age comes down with certain players who were young playing, but on a whole, when you think about it, it wasn't as young a team.
Even that back line, look at the back line, I'd say probably look at an average about 27 across there.
Precisely, yeah.
In terms of the age, which is
but
prime age.
Sterling as well. And
Sterling, Kane.
Who was one of the players of the tournament, to be fair to Sterling. I mean, he's absolutely phenomenal. I suppose to turn our attentions a bit closer to domestic, Bolton. You know more than anybody really, I know anyway, about Bolton. What do you see Bolton doing this season? And by the time this show airs, it will be just about on the eve of the first game.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't have a clue. I really don't know, but that's the excitement of it because I'm not worried about it. It's not like previous times under our previous owner, Ken Anderson, where we were dreading each season what was going to come in the ride at us, what we were going to hear in the news. I can purely focus on the football and see how we do. Ian Everett's got high expectation of those players, and we played Preston in the pre-season just recently and beat them 1-0, and that was a promising performance. Bakayoko and Owen Doyle looked difficult to mark. I think going forward from that game, it looked like perhaps our conversion rate from chances to goals isn't the greatest, and I almost wonder if it's not necessarily an out-and-out goal scorer we need. We've got that, but potentially someone who can play alongside a Doyle, who's brave and can break the lines. But I trust in Everett and I trust in Sharon Britton that what I'm seeing, they're also seeing. And going forward into League One, we've done all of our business very efficiently. We seem to be doing everything the way it should be done, and we can focus on the football. And I haven't a clue what their ambitions are. Do they want to go straight into the Championship? Do they want to stabilise themselves in League One?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, like you said, it's pre-season, and by the time this airs, they'll have played more games. But one thing I would say is that I did keep an eye on the game they played against FC United, and a lot of our listeners will know my involvement with Baker, and we played at FC United Manchester a week earlier, and I just want to see the barometer physically, because no two games are the same where our lads were. They played a good performance against FC United. We got a draw, not that matters anyway, because it's building through pre-season to get fitter. But I thought, let's just see how FC do against Bolton. And I have to admit, by all accounts, looking at things and reading between the lines, and I know by the time this airs, Bolton will have played more games and maybe the season started. But I have to say, to me, it seemed the team isn't settled as yet. I think trialists are still.
If you are looking at this from an optimistic fan point of view, which I will, because you have to really as a supporter, you can look at that and sort of and think the weather at the time, we've just come from our first hot weather warning that's purely on the heat of the weather in this nation's history.
Huge heat wave,
They were out there and from what I saw of the game, I almost question whether or not they just couldn't be bothered in the heat. And obviously that's no excuse, as Ian Everett said himself, there are no excuses with that. You've got to be...
Yeah, because it's hot for two teams, isn't
it? You're absolutely right. And you've got to question, did they think the game was worth it? And that mentality is not good enough. And it's up to Ian Everett to make sure that's corrected into the season, because you perform like that in a season match and it's absolutely unacceptable. I mean,
one thing he was for sure is he's honest about, and I think you've got to admire his honesty. In one sense, he came out, from what I can see, was open about the performance. So in that respect, it kind of give you an idea of the standards he's sort of going to... Does that, you think, from our Bolton listeners, give him some confidence to think, well, actually, as a manager who's got high standards, who wants to do...
Yeah, and he's consistent with his standards. He doesn't one week praise them and give them excuses, and the next week have a massive go at them. He's consistent with his standards and his attitude in interviews and how he speaks about the players. And so far, it's always seemed to work. It seems to really improve their attitudes. And I've seen video clips of the way he speaks to the players in the dressing room. He's clearly a passionate manager. You just got to look at that and think, how far will the players let that improve them, and at any point will they look at the way that he's speaking to them and actually regressed, and that's my only concern. But you put ultimate trust in the manager. He's done a fantastic job so far, and hopefully he carries that on.
No, great shout. And I suppose moving forward for yourself, having been involved in Rage Your Game and going to Wembley, one of the greatest stadiums in the world, if not the greatest, the most iconic football stadium to watch England play at home in a major championship. What's from here? It's like, I mean, respectfully to Bolton, they're a great team, and I know you're a very passionate fan, and there's no bigger fan than yourself for them, and you're sort of keen to get back involved and sort of report the games. But for yourself going forward, what now? Where do you sort of?
Yeah, I think I might as well just give up now. I've done it all now. No, I think going forward it is purely now becoming that supporter again at matches. You know, what built my channel from the beginnings, and getting back in stadiums, it's something I've missed so much. I'm so excited for that first day back at Bolton Wanderers, and also across the Premier League and the Champions League, elite football. You can go and watch it live again and soak up the atmosphere and just getting in amongst it as a supporter. I think I'll spend the entirety of the season just getting involved and creating as many sort of moments for me and for the viewers as possible. Absolutely,
and for our listeners who may not know what your channel is, can you sort of share the details so they can check it out, and irrespective of whether they're a Bolton fan, an England fan, or just a fan of football, because you do a lot of other programs on there outside Bolton, and obviously you could say the primary focus is Bolton, England, but you do cover many other teams and many different viewers. And where can the sort of our listeners log in? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I talk about everything. You know, I love to waffle about football and discuss it with all the viewers. You can watch it at StuntPegg on YouTube, and pretty much just whatever you fancy at the time, Premier League, Championship, League 1, League 2. I talk about it all and sort of discuss it with viewers in the comments as well, and I'd love to see you there.
Do you have like social media as well that people?
Yeah, I've got Twitter and Instagram, which Instagram my mum tells me I need to start posting more on there, so I'm a bit rubbish on there, which I'm trying to do, and just all sorts of ways that I can sort of communicate with people and have forums for football, really.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's really kind of you to join us on the show, the Salford 94.5 FM, the Friday Sports Show. It's been an interesting insight into your experience on Rage Your Game, Wembley, England. We wish Bolton every success, providing it's not at the expense of our local team, Salford, in that respect, which obviously different leagues next year anyway, so that won't matter too much. But no, we do sort of wish you every success as well, and Bolton every success, and hopefully you'll come back on the show and update us throughout the season.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining us. That was StuntPegg, AKA StuntPegg, and do check out her YouTube channel if you get a chance. StuntPegg, if you put it on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find it. She was very kind enough to share her experiences over the course of the last few weeks or so, and as we all eagerly anticipate the start of a new season. 94.5 FM, Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show, your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.